Today's Toy Spot, we are now having a look at the Friday the 13th Part 4, the Final Chapter Jason Voorhees. This would be the battle damaged version. On par with the last release of the Friday the 13th figures from Neca. With the Friday the 13th 3D, we got a regular version of Jason, we got a battle damaged version of Jason. If you didn't necessarily pick up both figures, you had the option at least to get one or the other. Now, Neca has that tradition with this release of the Friday the 13th Part 4, being that we have a regular version, which I've already shot the review of, and we also have the battle damaged version. There are some slight variations and a retooling of the head. We will get into that in a second. Package is the exact same between the two figures. We've got the poster down below of Friday the 13th, the final chapter, and also the title screen from the NES classic Friday the 13th. Not a great game. I know, my category is not a great game. No, not a great game at all. Was it? Yeah, he didn't like that game either. He could barely get past the opener of the game. I got a little further, but on the back of the package, the read-up says, after his revival in a hospital morgue, the hockey mask murderer fixes his vengeful attention on the Jarvis family and a group of carefree teenagers. Young Tommy Jarvis is an aficionado of horror films with a special talent for masks and makeup effects. Has the diabolical Jason finally met his match? You decide. Down below, the two figures that you can get from this release. Obviously, we have the Battle Damaged Jason, which we will be looking at now. There is also the Standard Jason, which Spot has already reviewed. So check that out if you are interested. What I am going to do is I'm going to get this one opened up, and when we come back, there is definitely more Jason heading your way, as we have a look at the Battle Damaged version of Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Don't go anywhere. More on the way. So, with the battle damage version of Jason Voorhees, you are essentially getting the exact same figure, if I just reach off camera here, as the original non-damaged version of Jason. The torso, the legs, everything else are the exact same between the two. The only difference is some additional slight tweaking, I would say slight tweaking in the body, and like the head specifically, and again some additional blood. Now I'm looking at the two figures. The shirt, you will see the shirt over here on the battle damage version of Jason, looks slightly different. Looks a slightly different color. Let's just zoom in here. A slight different color than that of the undamaged Jason. You see that? The legs look like they're the exact same color. The shoes and everything else are the exact same color. But the shirts definitely look like they're slightly different from one another. Aside from that, the hands are the exact same. I've got the non-damaged Jason holding his machete. The other hand also the exact same. Dirty hands, long fingernails. That's the way Jason rocks it. But yeah, really that is essentially the exact same figure. Now, where you will also see the real difference between the two is we just reach over here. I'm not going to do this too often with this figure because I'm not liking how hard it is. I said there really wasn't any flaws, any particular issues with these Jason figures. I suppose the one, if I could make any gripe, is more so just for how hard it is to get the mask off. There we go. Now you will see the Jason face that we had discussed before in the previous review. I thought they did a really great job on it. The sculpt is done so immensely well. You will see absolutely no gash or anything on the side of his face, really just the one gash where his axe wound would have been. Now, if we take off the battle damage Jason, which I find his mask is a little easier to take off, you can see there is the difference between the two. Let's zoom in. I'm going to see if I can get both of them here. you will see that the Jason on the right, I guess on your right side, viewing side, pretty much shares the exact same face from, I guess, from this point, let's say about this point on. Where the real difference comes is the side of the damaged Jason has obviously a big gash, a big crevice at the side of his face. You'll also see too his mouth is a little more open than that of the non-damaged Jason. This one's a little more angry. He's probably not thrilled with the fact that he has a big gash in his head, and likely it's due to what's going to be in his head. This Jason, not as much. So the mouths are just slightly tweaked. That is essentially your big difference between the two figures, is just strictly the head and then some slight slight blood addition to the figure itself. Now, if we move this guy aside, we've already seen him, and we have a look at the face, the facial expression, the details. Again, done really, really well in this particular Jason. Now, again, you will see that there is a big crevice, big gash, big canal in the side of Jason's face where his eye would be. The idea is that you would take the machete that is included with Jason, and as Spot mentioned in his last review, you will see as well there's blood on the blade, like so. You will take the blade, not for the faint of heart, you'll take the blade and you'll actually put it in the side of his face. Now initially, when I put the blade in, it seemed as if, and it's doing it right now, it seemed as if the blade didn't actually sit into his face. I applied pressure and the canal didn't seem like it was wide enough. The actual thing is, I'm going to zoom the camera in here a bit. You will see how there's a little, well, there's the big canal, little crevice area here where you can fit the blade, but you see right here, there's almost a secondary notch. The idea is you're actually going to take the blade, pardon my hand, and you're going to line the blade up with that notch. Oops. It also helps if Spot did not drop the knife. There's the knife once again. Let's resume that where we were. You're actually going to tuck it into that crevice. So you're actually going to push it in on an angle. Instead of pushing it flat against the head, you're actually going to push it in on an angle so it sits in that little tiny groove. I just removed the little hair there. And then you have Jason sporting, and I shouldn't even say sporting, that looks painful, horribly, horribly painful. There you have Jason with his gash, with his big knife, big machete stuck in his forehead. Not likely how I'm going to display him, but I like the aspect that at least you can do that. Now, your other thought is, does the blade actually go into his hand? I think it can. I made some efforts to try to get it in there, but it doesn't have as much of the wow factor as obviously the blade into the side of the head. My cats are just playing on the ground if you're wondering. But I guess you could do it if you wanted to. The real money is obviously the blade at the side of the head. Now, in the way of his articulation, Jason, this battle damage Jason would be the exact same as the other Jason in the fact that he has a ball-jointed head, moves up and down, left and right. You can't really move it too much just because the head, as you can see, because it's so large back here, it's not going to move it too much. But obviously you can still move the head left and right. Pin and socket shoulder, so the arms will rotate all the way around, back and forth. He has a bend in the elbow, the arms also rotate back and forth. Ball jointed hand, so you can rotate the hand any which way you want. He has an upper torso bend and also swivel, which I don't think I mentioned in the other review. I think I mentioned it only has a swivel. His legs go forward, back, out, swivel at the knee, also a bend at the knee, swiveled foot, as it appears to be just a pegged in foot. Now, the one problem I have with the figure is kind of the same problem I had with the Friday the 13th Part 3D Jason, in the fact that being that the way that they're pegged now, you get much more articulation, but it also kind of means the legs get a little loose. And I'm hoping that's not going to get progressively loose as the figure continues to sit out loose out of package. I'm hoping that's not going to be the case, but it is what it is. Also, as a side note, one other accessory you get with this particular Jason is you also get an axe. Something that you did not get with the other Jason, but I'm glad they included it with this particular one. So, really nice. Really, really nice. The one thing I really like about these Jasons, too, is I'm going to put this guy aside. My cat continues to play on the floor. One thing I really like about the Jason, too, is that if you have several Jasons, you would then say to yourself, well, which Jason do I really specifically want? How will I have him on display? And one thing I'll just quickly get these guys together here for a second. One thing I like about Jasons as opposed to Freddy's is that you can have different versions of him on display. So, for example, I have the Friday the 13th Part 3D Jason. If you want, you could kind of have the mask up like so. And you can kind of have him looking like he did when he is, around the noose. You can kind of have his mask slightly up. When you get to Friday the 13th Part 4 Jason, I would go with iconic hockey mask on and keep him the way he should be. However, when I get to the battle damaged version of Jason Voorhees, being that he is, by this stage of the game, his mask is already off, Tommy Jarvis is wailing on him, and he eventually gets the machete in there. I think this particular Jason, I would likely have him unmasked. Ludicrous? Perhaps. There's the mask right there, but I would probably opt to have the mask left off. Now, some would say, well, why didn't Neca just simply give us a head swap that we could just interchange the figures? I'm perfectly fine with having two Jasons that are very similar to one another with slight tweaks. Because again, for me, I like the notion of having two different versions, two different ways to display them on a shelf. Masked Jason with hockey mask, looking very cool with machete, and possibly unmasked Jason with either machete in his face or just as you see here. So I really like the option. I don't know how this is going to translate when it comes to maybe Part 5, Part 6. I don't know if we're going to get damaged versions of those figures or if we're just going to get standalone singular Jasons. But for these particular figures, I like the variety of having them on display like you see here. I'm just going to move this guy out of the way. Now this one I gave a perfect 10. I have zero problem with this particular figure. I really would say by same comparison, this figure really should still be on par as it shares pretty much the exact same features as the other figure. So for that reason, I'm also going to give the Battle Damage Jason a 10. Your choice as to whether you want to have him with or without his hockey mask. By the way, there is his hockey mask once again. You'll also see too the additional red details are missing on this mask versus the other one. But it's your choice as to which way you want to display him. Spot's totally going to rock it without the hockey mask. I don't know where I'm going to put this one. Maybe I could just have him holding it like so. But still definitely a must-have figure to pick up. If you are a horror movie fan, likely you already have this guy part of your collection. If you haven't, and you are looking for one display piece for a Jason figure, look no further, my friends, than the either Part 4 Jason or this one, the Part 4 Damaged Jason. Both surefire guaranteed hits to your collection. Today's Toy Spot, we're having a look at the NECA Friday the 13th Part 4, the Final Chapter, Battle Damaged Jason Voorhees. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time. I suppose the one thing Spot really should have done with the end of this review was we had the battle damage version of Part 4 Jason. For giggles, here's the Part 4 damage version of Jason from Part 3. And you can see the difference between the two figures. Again, a difference between them. They're not obviously the exact same figure. And one thing also that I really wanted to say too was I think when I was talking about the Part 3 Jason and the ways to display him, I probably would have had his face up. This particular Jason actually, being that he is undamaged, I would likely have his mask down. And I would probably have him holding his harpoon gun. This Jason, on the other hand, I probably would either have the mask up, like so, or I would have his mask just off. just off, as you will see. And also for comparisons, I'm just going to take these masks off so you can see the difference between the two battle damage Jasons. Very similar aspects, still very different though. This one a little more like an Igor, kind of mutated hillbilly. This guy is a little more like a mutant monster. There are your comparisons, guys. Should have had a V8. Spot forgot to really do a comparison of the two damage versions. Either way, I mean, this probably is going to be a guy that I'm going to have unmasked. I don't know. I mean, the mask really was a disappointing aspect to this particular figure. But there are your two differences. I'm just going to throw this onto the video so that you guys can see those differences too. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.